Iraq's parliament votes to expel US and other foreign troops after the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad. Meanwhile, thousands in Iran turn out to pay their respects as his remains return home. Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido and his rival Luis Parra both declared themselves the parliament's speaker, following two separate votes amid accusations of a parliamentary coup. And Australia's Prime Minister responds to criticism for his handling of bushfires. He says the focus must be on tackling the blazes. Those are our top headlines here on France 24. I'm Alexander Orcott. Now, US President Donald Trump has threatened sanctions on Iraq if US troops are forced to leave the country. This comes after Iraqi MPs voted for all foreign troops to be expelled after the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani by a US airstrike at Baghdad airport. Speaking to us earlier, Joost Hilterman from the NGO International Crisis Group explained that the vote is unlikely to be acted on.
The vote is merely symbolic. Parliament in Iraq doesn't really have any serious power. It certainly cannot legislate anything of the sort. It can only give an advisory opinion to the government. And it was the government who sent this issue to the parliament in the first place. So they're playing it back and forth. If now the decision goes back to the government, we have to realize that we don't have a government in Iraq, but an acting one, which doesn't really have much legitimacy. And that forming a new government that could take a decision of this kind of significance is going to be very difficult to form. Governments in Iraq take months to form, and when there are sensitive issues such as this on the table, it could take a very, very long time. So it's very hard to see how Iraq could order US forces to leave. But in two other ways it could happen. One is if the United States decides that enough is enough and it gets out, because it didn't like the symbolic vote, or because Iraqi pro-Iranian forces in Iraq make life very difficult for American forces stationed on Iraqi bases.
On Sunday evening in Baghdad, at least 3 explosions believed to be rockets or mortars landed inside the heavily fortified green zone that houses the US Embassy and as well as others. The second such attack in as many days, though no casualties have been reported. Meanwhile, in Iran, vast crowds have gathered in cities nationwide to pay final tribute to General Soleimani as his remains arrived in the capital city, where he'll be laid to rest later this week. Iran's also announced it will no longer abide by the terms of the 2015 nuclear deal. Monty Francis explains.
The announcement on Iranian state TV came after an emergency meeting of the country's National Security Council on Sunday.
Iran no longer faces any limitations in operations, enrichment capacity or percentage, stockpile of enriched material or of research and development.
Today is an historic day.
The deal, brokered by world powers in 2015, blocked Tehran from having enough material to build a nuclear weapon. U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew from the agreement 2 years ago and has since imposed crippling economic sanctions on Iran. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, who helped negotiate the accord, said in a tweet Sunday Iran had taken the 5th and final step to back away from the deal, but would continue to cooperate with inspectors from the International Atomic Agency. He added that Iran would consider returning to the agreement if economic sanctions were lifted. The announcement comes in the wake of a U.S. drone strike that killed top Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad Friday, and amid rising tensions between Tehran and Washington.
How do we do?
European leaders who helped broker the nuclear deal are urging Iran to reconsider. The European Union's foreign policy chief has invited Zarif to Brussels to discuss preserving the nuclear deal with Tehran.
Moving on to other world news, and there were scenes of chaos in Venezuela's capital after the police prevented opposition MPs, including opposition leader Juan Guaido, from entering a special session of parliament. While he was kept outside, rivals installed Luis Parra as speaker in what the opposition is describing as a parliamentary coup.
Scuffles outside the National Assembly as security forces blocked Juan Guaido from entering the building. At one point, the opposition leader trying to scale the fence to get in before being pushed back. Other opposition MPs, too, being subjected to security checks, with some also denied admittance. It was equally chaotic inside the National Assembly as lawmakers loyal to President Nicolas Maduro sought to install a new parliamentary speaker in place of Guaido. An impromptu vote was held and Luis Parra, who was expelled from the opposition for alleged corruption, declared himself the new speaker.
Today, we come here with a Democratic alternative to ask all MPs to stop confrontation. In this conflict, nobody wins.
Guaido's supporters have denounced the proceedings.
Parliamentary coup. Without votes or a quorum, members of the PSUV tried to swear in a false leadership.
Gathering at the offices of El Nacional newspaper, opposition lawmakers re-elected Guaido as parliamentary leader. Meanwhile, Maduro quickly recognized Parra's claim to the speakership.
Let no one be surprised by what happened today. There was simply a session of the National Assembly, and the National Assembly elected a new board of directors.
The dramatic events mark an escalation in Maduro's bid to end Guaido's quest to unseat him. By depriving Guaido of leading the National Assembly, Maduro is hoping to rob him of his legitimacy on the world stage.
President Emmanuel Macron has offered French aid to Australia to help it deal with the worst fire season on record. Following a call with Prime Minister Scott Morrison, the Australian leader has been heavily criticised for his handling of the crisis after he initially took a holiday in Hawaii while homes were being destroyed. He also was heckled by locals when he visited one fire-ravaged town.
There will be no levy. There's been a lot of commentary. There's been plenty of criticism. I've had the benefit of a lot of analysis on a lot of issues. But I can't be distracted by that. And the public, I know, are not distracted by that. What they need us to focus on, all of us, actually, all of us, focusing on the needs there in the communities and getting the support where it needs to go.
Japanese authorities are still trying to understand how the former Renault-Nissan boss Carlos Ghosn was able to skip bail and flee the country. Catherine Viet has more on the bizarre escape.
A black trunk just over a meter high, with 2 holes drilled in it for breathing. According to the Wall Street Journal, it was hiding in this trunk, typically used for concert audio gear, that enabled Carlos Ghosn to sneak out of Japan. The former Renault-Nissan CEO left his Tokyo apartment on Sunday, December 29th alone, making his way towards the Osaka airport. At some point, he would have climbed into the trunk to bypass security checks. Once on board, one private plane would fly him to Istanbul, where a second plane was waiting to take him to Beirut. Ghosn's daring escape has left Japanese officials outraged. In a statement, the Japanese Justice Minister said, "Our nation's criminal justice system carries out appropriate procedures to establish the truth. The flight of a suspect while out on bail is never justified." After arriving in Lebanon, Ghosn says he planned his escape by himself, but the Wall Street Journal reports that he was accompanied by at least 2 Americans on the first flight, security contractors skilled in exfiltration. Meanwhile, in Turkey, officials have arrested several people, including 4 pilots and an airline employee. They are suspected of playing a role in Ghosn's escape from Japan to Lebanon. The Turkish private plane operator MNG Jet says an employee falsified records, leaving Ghosn's name off of any of the flight's documentation. The company has filed a criminal complaint over what it says is the illegal use of its jet charter service.
And the Golden Globes are currently underway in Los Angeles. There's been disappointment for the 2 French productions in the Best Foreign Film category. That award has gone to the South Korean movie Parasite from director Bong Joon-ho. It also claimed the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival earlier on. Stay tuned to France 24.